200. Today is Tuesday. This video is late and I apologize for that. I was a little bit sick over the weekend and then Monday got really busy, as I am sure you are all experiencing at this time of the semester. So anyway, today we're going to talk about financial issues, power of attorney for financial, and the ins and outs of that. Last week we talked about power of attorney for healthcare decision making. And if you don't have a living will or a power of attorney for healthcare, you can work around it. If you get sick and you're not able to make your own decisions, the doctors will likely rely on your closest family members to make those decisions for you. For financial reasons, my dog's running around. She's all peppy for a 13-year-old. Anyway, for financial reasons, if you don't have the paperwork in place, you are going to be in trouble. So if something happens to you or your parents or something like that, and someone else needs to go in and pay their bills, that's going to be a little bit more difficult if you don't have financial power of attorney. So it is a very important step to take. It's relatively easy. You might need an attorney to draft one. And my dog's choking. She's 13 years and 1 month, so she's got some issues right now. We're living the gerontology life with her. So, okay, but anyway, let's get going. So I'm going to, before I start actually covering the material, I want to remind you your CT2 was due on April 6th. If you haven't turned it in, there's still a chance to get some partial credits. So go ahead and turn it in. I usually have John doing this, so prepare for me to be awkward with the mouse. Your final interview paper is due Wednesday, May 4th. It's that first Wednesday of finals. We have a second midterm exam that, remember, is going to be open for basically 2 weeks. So most of you are going to take it the last week of classes. That's fine. But it will be open starting this Saturday for people who know that you're going to have a really busy week, the last week of classes, and would like to get it out of the way sooner. So I will record the last lecture, and I will post it before Saturday so that you have that material. And I will try to send out an outline kind of tips on what to study and how to approach the exam before Saturday as well. We also have extra credit, so that will add 3 points to your final grade. So if you have an 87, but you'd rather get an A-, do the extra credit. You can put together a PowerPoint. You can put together a short paper. A lot of students will just record a quick video on their phones talking about their lives. I love that. I love seeing your faces. And if you have trouble uploading it to Blackboard, which can happen if the video is a little bit longer, you can upload it to your Google Drive and share the link with me that way. So if you have any questions, reach out to me and I can give you some tips or help you out. Okay, now I'm going to go to GERO 200 weekly assignments. Come on, everything's slow, very, very slow internet today. Okay, we are down here on financial power of attorney. Starts Monday 11th, so we're a day behind already. Sorry. So we have this good brief document from AARP, the American Association for Retired Persons, and they have a lot of great resources on their website for basically any issue that comes up with aging. So I'm going to open up that. Come on, come on, come on. Okay, all righty. So this is where I'm going to get really awkward because I'm operating the mouse and I also have some notes so that I don't forget to tell you the important things. So creating a financial power of attorney, it's usually a quick, short document where you name someone else to act as your agent. Just like you hire a real estate agent to buy a house, you're going to name someone else to act as your agent for your financial matters. You would be considered the principal. So you are the person who says, I want this other person to do things for me. So you're appointing an agent to do financial matters for you. Now, your financial power of attorney can be very limited so that you say, I only want this person to have access to my checking account to pay my bills, or it can be very broad. The one that I have set up, the one that my husband has set up, the one that my kids have set up, we have said, I will let my husband sign any documents for me. He can buy and sell stocks. He can buy and sell real estate. He can buy and sell cars. He can sign any contract for me. He can pay my bills. He can do whatever is necessary because I trust him. And that's what works for me. But you can also make it very limited. So if you wanted to minimize the risk that someone will take advantage of your loved one financially, you might say, okay, we're going to give a limited power of attorney to a loved one or trusted person just to pay bills out of their checking account, not to sell their home, not to sell their car, not to sell their stocks or go into their investment portfolios or anything like that. So there's a couple different ways you can set it up. You can say that it only goes into effect if I'm incapacitated. So that would be a springing power of attorney is the legal term of art for that. It springs into effect when you become incapacitated. I don't like that so much because then you have to get bogged down in determining whether someone's incapacitated or not. So I have my power of attorney set up so that it's effective as of the date I signed it. So that going forward, anytime, if I'm out of town and John needs to sign a contract for me, he can do that. And so it really depends on your situation. There's also a durable power of attorney. That just means that it lasts until you rip it up. You might have, so when we talk about conventional power of attorneys, you might have a power of attorney that's temporary. So I'm involved in a business deal, I'm involved in buying a house, and I want to give my trusted loved one, my partner, my spouse, whatever, the power to sign documents for me just for the next couple of weeks because I'm going to be out of town on business. That's a conventional power of attorney that would begin on the date that I sign it, and then it would end when I become mentally incapacitated or on a set date. So it could be more temporary. Okay, I have a durable power of attorney. So choosing an agent, make sure it's someone you trust. So when you're doing estate planning and you're doing planning for your healthcare decision making and your financial decision making, and maybe you have little children and you want to set up a will with a guardian, those might not always be the same person. So I might trust someone with my children. Of course, my kids are adults now, so I don't have to worry about that anymore, thank goodness. But I might trust someone to raise my kids, but I wouldn't necessarily trust the same person to handle my money. So you have to think about who's really responsible, who's fiscally prudent, who's not going to get access to your checking account and go to Vegas, So you got to kind of think about the person's personality, what their track record is with money. I have two siblings I wouldn't trust with my money because both of them have money problems. John's brother, I would trust for 100 years with my money because he's very conservative and very careful and he keeps meticulous records and he would be the best. I trust both of my sons with my money because they're pretty careful too, and I think they make good decisions. So even though they're 20 and 26, I feel like they can handle it. So and my power of attorney for financial, John's number one, my husband. Number two is my 26-year-old son. Number three is my 20-year-old son. And I might even have a number four, which would be John's brother, who's 76. So we, because he's getting older, we didn't want to put too much responsibility on him. So the person who is named as your agent that you're giving that power of attorney to, they don't have ownership rights in your financial account. So they can't say, I need to buy a car. I'm going to clean out your account and buy myself a car. And they can't say, well, hey, I know I'm going to inherit your money anyway, so I'm just going to start accessing it. They can only use that money for your benefit and your purposes. So they have a duty to only use that money for you. And they can't just go clean your account out. If they do, then they've committed a crime and they can be charged. Now, what happens if you have a power of attorney and things change? So you might set one up when you're 25 or 20. And then when you're 30, things, okay, I don't know how to get rid of that. Oh, sorry. A little pop-up screen. Anyway, so maybe you changed your mind. Your life changes. You should revisit these issues every 5 or 10 years, or if you move, if you get married, if you get divorced, if you have a estrangement with relatives, whatever. You got to revisit who you've named to be your power of attorney periodically. So things are going to change. If you want to cancel your power of attorney, you can tear it up, you can sign a new one that's dated more recently would always prevail. Put in writing in a letter that you want to cancel it. Maybe you don't want anyone to have power of attorney right now. You should notify the person that you've named so that there's not bickering later on. if someone names you power of attorney, which is what I've done with my kids, I have a notebook that has all of our accounts with the information, you know, an account with Fidelity, an account with American Funds, an account here, Bank of America, blah, blah, blah. So I have a notebook with all the information about all the accounts, and I've shown it to them so that if they need to handle my finances, they'll at least know what they are. So sitting down with someone and saying, these are my bills, these are my financial accounts, this is what's going on, is a great idea. Making sure that if you're the person that's been named agent, you're familiar with what might happen and that you know what their priorities are. So it's a good conversation to have to say, hey, what if your house needs a big repair? Do you want that, or would you rather that we sell your house? You know, how long do you want to stay in your house? Most people are going to say as long as possible. Okay, so choose someone you trust, choose someone who keeps good records, choose someone who is good with money. Now, I also like to have some oversight. So if you have a grandparent or if you have a parent who's older, who's given power of attorney to someone else to handle their bills and stuff like that, I use an app, and I'm not, you know, endorsing this app. I'm just saying there's a lot of apps out there. I use an app called Mint, and on my phone, I get notifications. Hey, these were your expenses that happened this week, or these are your, I can look in and say, oh, yeah, we had a charge at the sushi place this week. There was a mistake in our order, and so my son's girlfriend said, hey, why don't you check on your credit card to see, did they bill you the full amount and short us on our order or not? So I was able to do that real quickly on my phone. So I can see what charges are coming through. So if you have a grandparent that you're worried about being abused financially, you can use an app like Mint and track, okay, this is the money that's flowing in and out of their account, and this is where it's going, because it's unfortunately very common for paid caregivers or family members to financially abuse elder people and take advantage of having access to their accounts. So I am going to get out of this and get out of that. And this is where having John would be better. Okie dokie. Well, let's try here. Nope, that's not it. I'm trying to get into Blackboard, which I did have, and I don't have anymore. Mother trucker. Well, okay. Can I go back? No. Can I go back there? No. Okay. All right. Well, this isn't ideal, but we can make it work. It's the time in the semester when nothing is ideal, but we can make it work. Okay, so now I want to go back into weekly assignments. I promise you John will be back next week. And he will make sure these weird things don't happen. I'm trying to go into okay, I got into weekly assignments. We're going to go down to talk about elder abuse. All righty, so here's our discussion this week is about elder abuse. And we have some great resources at USC because we do have a Center for Elder Abuse at USC. One of the things I like to talk about is we know that elder abuse is an issue in the United States, but what is also true is that elder abuse is an issue worldwide. We see it in a lot of countries, not just the US. I do admit that we unfortunately have a culture in the US where there's not as much respect paid to older people, so they may be a little bit more vulnerable, but we also have more rigorous tracking systems, so we identify elder abuse maybe a little bit more often when it happens, but we are seeing that it is a worldwide issue. And because we have big aging populations in a lot of countries, and we have children, caregivers that are squeezed between trying to work really hard and survive and take care of kids and take care of their parents. It puts a lot of pressure on caregivers, which creates situations where elder abuse may occur. So I'm going to talk a little bit about data just from the US. So these are charts that are taken from the USC Elder Abuse website. 1 in 10 people that were surveyed reported having some form of elder abuse in the past year. And when we look at the type of elder abuse that's most common, it's current financial abuse by a family member. So that's why you have to be so careful with that durable power of attorney for financial. potential neglect, emotional abuse. The things that we worry about the most, physical abuse and sexual abuse, are actually the things that happen the least often. But of course, when they do happen, the ramifications and the trauma that would occur and the physical injuries that would occur are very, very significant. Who are the abusers? Most often, 90% of the abusers are family members. So we see these family members who are either caregivers that are under a lot of pressure, they're caregivers that have mental health issues, they're caregivers that have drug or alcohol addiction issues. They have access to the elderly person, and so they are the people that most often are in a position, unfortunately, to abuse the elderly person. This takes us to our next statistic. 93% of elder abuse isn't reported. Why is that? People are ashamed. They're ashamed that their family members would do this to them. So shame is a very powerful deterrent to reporting elder abuse. People are afraid. If I report this elder abuse by my family member, that family member may refuse to take care of me. I may have no one. And so that shame and fear keeps elderly people from reporting. And quite often, the people who are being abused have dementia or some form of diminished capacity and may have difficulty understanding how to navigate the system. So takes us to our next statistic. 47% of participants with dementia had been mistreated by their caregivers. I worry about this because I know from experience when we're dealing with people who have dementia, sometimes they get upset and they make statements that aren't true. It's part of their dementia symptoms. They might have paranoia, they might be unhappy, they might be disgruntled. However, we have to listen. We have to listen and pay attention and investigate. If you have a relative who has dementia, who says, my caregiver has been stealing from me, my caregiver has been mistreating me, then pay attention. Look at the bank accounts. Check their arms and legs for bruises. Check to make sure that their jewelry isn't missing. Pay attention. When someone with dementia says something's happening, it deserves a further investigation because they are at high risk. So self-neglect is an issue. So elderly people can neglect themselves. People who have been self-neglecting are almost 6 times more likely to die within a year. Even if they survive that year, they're still almost twice as likely to die as those that were not self-neglecting. We see this trend of higher mortality rates across the board with confirmed victims of elder abuse. They're 2 times more likely to die if it's confirmed elder abuse. If it's suspected elder abuse, it's 1.38 times more likely to die. And if you're not abused, you have the lowest probability of dying. So this is from the World Health Organization, and it's a nice summary of what are the types of elder abuse. So we see physical abuse. We see elderly people who show up often at the doctor's office with bruises or evidence that they've been physically restrained. So you might have literally rope marks on their hands or on their ankles. You might have broken glasses. You might have black eyes. You might have bruises. Of course, older people bruise easily, so it's kind of hard to tell sometimes if this is just normal bruising that's part of aging and maybe you ran into the table this morning versus someone who's being physically abused. Psychological or emotional abuse, telling an older person no one cares about you, no one likes you, no one wants to come see you. Quite often, a tactic that abusers use is isolating the person. So a family member might isolate their elder relative and not allow other family members to come see them. If you are in a situation where you go to see grandma or grandpa and someone meets you at the door and says, no, you can't come in, then you should be very suspicious because that type of isolation is a hallmark of elder abuse. Sexual abuse. We see this sometimes in nursing homes. People who are living in institutional settings may be abused by the staff. They may be abused by other patients because sometimes people with dementia can act out sexually. Financial exploitation, number one thing that's happening in the US. We see jewelry being stolen. We see just items around the house disappearing. We see caregivers, paid or family caregivers, stealing the checkbook and writing checks, applying for credit cards under the person's name and running up credit card bills. We see them, taking money out of the person's account and buying things for themselves, things like that. And neglect or abandonment. There are very, very sad cases I've seen where an elderly person and a vulnerable person had hired a caregiver, and that caregiver did nothing, and the elderly person literally starves to death because they weren't being provided with food and hydration. So these are all things that medical professionals are on the lookout for when someone comes to their office. So it's unfortunate that the two groups that are abusers are family members and healthcare workers. So in those facilities, in assisted living facilities, in nursing homes, we have those aides that have direct access, provide direct care to the elderly person. And whether it's the evening shift where there's not as many people around, or whether it's during the day, we definitely see cases where the healthcare workers were not providing the care they were supposed to provide. And in some cases were financially abusing or physically abusing or verbally abusing, psychologically abusing the elderly people. Now, I think it's really important to understand risk factors for elder abuse. So what are the risk factors for the victim? What are the risk factors for the abusers? So for the victim, we see strong evidence that having a disability and being dependent is a very big risk factor. Poor physical health, being depressed, and having mental health issues. If you're depressed and you're being abused, you may be less likely to think, oh, I'm going to do something about this. You may just be so depressed that you're unable to pick up the phone or to tell people or to advocate for yourself. Having low income or socioeconomic status. One of my law school professors famously used to say, rich people get better stuff. When you get older, rich people get better stuff because in a rich person's house, you have your cleaning people, your cleaning crew that comes in and cleans your house. So they have eyes on you and they see if something's wrong. You have your gardener that comes to your house. You have your pool guy that comes to your house. You are probably more likely to live in a single family residence neighborhood where your neighbors are looking out for you. You have better access to health care, so you see the doctor more often. You might have home care or home health care coming to your house. You might have a physical trainer that comes to your house and works with you to keep you healthy. So having all these extra people that lay eyes on you when you are at higher income status means your risk of elder abuse goes down. So if you are low income, you might be stuck in an apartment, not able to get out. You may not leave your house very often. You may not have people who see you. And this is my dog who came to say hi. Hey, Bella, come here. Come on. See how old she is? She's very old. Okay. For individuals who are abusers, being depressed, they may feel like they have no options. They may not be able to work. They may feel like this is the only thing I can do is to take money from my grandparent, having drug or alcohol issues, and being financially and emotionally dependent on the elderly person. So I'm living with my grandparent or my great-grandparent. I'm dependent on them for housing. Okay. And then I'm giving you just some quotes that explain different perspectives on elder abuse. There's an estate planner, wealth manager that talks about financial abuse. There's an authority on elder abuse in the Chinese community that talks about the sense of shame when you are a victim of elder abuse and you don't want to report it. So these are kind of helpful as well. I also want to talk about loneliness and isolation. Those are factors that increase your risk of elder abuse, but they also increase the risk of mental and physical illness. Loneliness is a huge problem for seniors, particularly during the pandemic. They've been isolated and alone. So lonely seniors have a higher risk of physical and mental health decline. They have a much higher risk, a 64% higher risk of dementia. If you're lonely and isolated, you're not socially active, you're not talking to people, you're not engaging your brain in all these different ways. Now, in 2009, I would guess the numbers are higher, much, much higher during the pandemic. 1 in 4 seniors 85 and older felt lonely. When you get to be 85, a lot of your friends and a lot of your family members have already died. So your circle gets smaller and smaller of the people that you can reach out to and the people that you can count on. The physical health effect of loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is shocking. Because I think we all know that smoking is bad for you, but we don't think about loneliness being bad for elderly people. So if you have older relatives and you can reach out to them in some way, it will have a profound effect on their mental and physical health. So we see an increased risk of depression for seniors who live in care facilities. We see factors that contribute to being isolated, and they all make sense. If you're over 80, you're probably having a little more trouble getting around. You may not be driving anymore. You may not have that many friends left. Having chronic health problems, you're going to be more isolated in your home. Lack of contact with family. I know for many, many people, our families are scattered all over the U.S. So I'm dealing with my dad, who's 84. He's got many, many health problems, and I'm trying to handle this by phone, and email and text message, and trying to keep up on top of things. So it's really hard when your family's 2,000 miles away. Living with low income, so you have fewer resources, and changing family structures. So we have a lot of families where we're not cohesive anymore. We used to have multi-generational homes where grandma would live either next door or in the house, and now it's, the grandchildren are on the West Coast and grandma's on the East Coast and mom and dad are in the middle. So we've got changing family structures. So how can we alleviate loneliness and isolation? And I had, I think it was this semester, I had a student who said, you know what, in the mid-semester eval, said, hey, it's great what we're learning in GERO 200, but you guys never give us any solutions, so it makes me really sad and depressed, and I understand that. There are ways we can deal with elder abuse and ways that we can deal with loneliness and isolation. We have to develop communities that are easily accessible for our elderly residents. So have access to transportation, easy access to transportation. And so different communities deal with that in different ways. So we live in Orange County. My community has a program where older people get a subsidized Uber rate. So if I want to go play cards and I'm 80 and don't drive anymore, I can get a cheap Uber ride to the senior center to play cards. So better access to transportation. Integrate seniors into their communities. Have programs for seniors where they can interact with each other. Have programs for seniors where they can volunteer and interact with children or with pets or something like that. And using technology. I believe that technology is going to help us a lot. Certainly during the pandemic, having iPads distributed to nursing home residents was a lifeline for family members who weren't able to visit nursing homes to see their relatives. So that was a really, really, really big deal. So using technology, whether it's, having an iPhone where you can FaceTime or Zoom, or I have a stepdad who lives in Florida. I worry a lot because he's unsteady on his feet. Has he fallen? Is something going on? Having that technology. So he has a device that he wears now that will call for help if he falls, and it will work outside of his house. So that's really good. Okay, so that's everything. Now I have to figure out how to turn this off, which is a whole another issue. And let me see if I can find it. I'm going to have to do this. Maybe I'll have to edit this out later. Ice cream, screen recorder, and stop. All right, guys, hang in there. It's close to the end of the semester. We want good things for you. We want you all to do well. Fight on, buddy.